It's finally happening. I edited my Scotland videos. We're in Scotland. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel of crafting, crochet and knitting. My name is Nikki, and if you've been around for a little while then you'll already know that back in October I took a much anticipated trip up to Scotland. And yes, it has taken me this long to edit the videos. I got carried away, I recorded way too much, and it has just been this massive, overwhelming task on my to-do list since then. But I have finally condensed it down into a handful of shorter videos for us to have a chat about. So that first video was just a little taster of some of the clips and pics from our various travel days. We did a lot of travelling on this holiday, a lot of driving, and sometimes the journey was more scenic than the destination. So I wanted to show you. So in that last video, we have the classic border crossing. So you have the Scottish flag on the side of the road, so you know when you've crossed onto the Scottish side. We had a picture there of the Three Sisters near Glencoe, so mountain range near Glencoe. Photos looking over Loch Ness, now that was very pretty. And also we had our crossing of Oban Bridge one day as we returned back to our accommodation. Very rainy crossing of Oban Bridge as we came home to our accommodation. That last one, actually very freaky experience. I'm sure the locals are really used to this, but it's a traffic controlled bridge, so you only actually go over one side at a time. It's not a two-way street, it's just one road. And so we were sat there for a couple of minutes at a red light watching cars coming across the bridge towards us and going past us, and then the traffic light turns and it's your turn to go across. So we're driving over and I'm constantly thinking, I'm on the wrong side of the road, what's happening? Because you've been sat there for several minutes and your brain is conditioned to think that you're on the wrong side of the road. So that was really weird. My husband got the better view in that shot because I was driving, he was taking the video, and he was like pointing out over the loch and he was saying it was really pretty even though it was rainy. He doesn't mind the rain. And yeah, I'm there like really focusing on the road because I'm thinking that cars are coming towards us any minute. So I didn't get the benefit of that view. But yeah, just very strange experience. There was a couple of places I didn't get photos. So we actually travelled past and stopped near Ben Muir at one point. So there was a little walk where you could just kind of walk into this like little park estate and see Ben Muir in the distance. So we did that and I didn't get any photos. I don't know why I didn't get any photos. And then there was also Loch Ness that we stopped by at one point. I didn't get any photos. But yes, lots of travel. And I think it's probably fine I didn't get photos of those last things since I've got so much other footage to show you. So we stayed on a self-catering park in Glen Nevis, so right at the foot of Ben Nevis, and it was incredible. It was so peaceful and autumnal and colourful. It was, yeah, I absolutely would want to go back. It was so nice. We actually used self-catering facilities a lot. We ate in most nights just because we wanted to sit in the cabin and look out the window and enjoy the calm, and we had a pretend fireplace, a glass of wine, our knitting or our books, just relaxing after some very busy days. I mentioned before about how we did loads of driving, so just to come back to the cabin a little bit early to be able to still see out the window, watching the sunset, seeing all the bright colours and the birds, with our food, with our books and our knitting, was such a peaceful experience. So I know that not everyone is going to want to see Scotland, but you know me well enough to know that I came home with lots of yarny goodness. So I'm going to start there because I know that's why you're here. I visited 2 yarn shops whilst I was on my travels. One of them wasn't actually in Scotland. One of them was in Lancaster on the way up. So we stopped by Northern Yarn. We used it as a bit of a way stop, so otherwise that would have been a really long drive. So whilst my husband was grabbing coffee, I went to the yarn shop. And it's a smallish shop. It's not on the main road, so I did kind of have a little bit of a hunt to find it, but it's just up a little side street off the main road, and it had quite a lot of variety and lots of woolly wools available. So let me show you what I bought. Strangely enough, considering we were on our way to Scotland, I actually found a yarn there that is more attributed to Scotland, or more specifically to Shetland, and that is Jamieson's. So this is actually the first shop I've seen Jamieson's in, and I've heard people talking about it as a really good yarn for colour work. I didn't want to pick up loads of this yarn because I've not tried it before, and also because if I'm going to buy it, I really want to buy it in bulk when I go to Shetland, because that is somewhere that's on my list. But I did want to buy enough to give it a try, so they come in 25-gram balls. I picked up 1 shade of Midnight and 1 shade of Burnt Umber in the Shetland Spindrift, just to give it a go. So I think that should be enough to maybe make like a mug cover, or maybe even some gloves, I don't know, but we'll give it a try and see how I like it. Another thing that I picked up was this Bio Balance yarn. So I don't actually recognise where it's from on the label, but I'm assuming maybe Germany or Netherlands or something, because I know that they call it Garn there. And it is a wool cotton blend. I don't come across many wool cotton blends, which is why I picked up this, and it's this nice teal colour. It's got a little bit of dryness from the cotton, a little bit of rustic from the wool, but it's still quite soft. So I'm interested to see how I like working with that. And then the next 2 things I picked up were, they seem to be like a hand dyer that this shop supports. So Northern Yarn has a lot of yarn from Rivernets. So this is a hand dyed yarn in the colourway Bonfire. So it's again this bronze and navy combination I'm quite liking at the moment, with a little bit more of a sort of cyany teal blue there as well. And this is 4-ply 100% blue faced Leicester, spun and hand dyed in the UK. So looking forward to working with that. That's a little bit more my classic yarn that I do buy. But I also picked up a Chimera skein. So this was 100 grams and this is 50 grams, but it is this marled zebra-like yarn. So it is also from Rivernets, but Chimera's brand, and you can see it's got this contrasting yellow that has been spun into a burgundy and purple combination. So you know me, I like purple, I like burgundy, so I've been trying to find a zebra-ish yarn for a while now, but it's always really bright bold colours and black, and that's not really my style, whereas something that is burgundy and purple with just that little bit of contrasting yellow is definitely more my pace. And this is also 100% blue faced Leicester in the colourway Mahogany. So Really liked those. And the last thing that I picked up from Northern Yarn is a yarn that I have seen before in other people's videos, but I've not seen before in shops. So I picked up a skein of Life in the Long Grass. This is 100% merino and it's in the colourway Tree Bark. 100-gram skein, and it does have this nice tree bark look. So you know, like when you're a kid and you draw tree bark in brown, but actually if you look at it as an adult you realise it can have a more grey tone, especially if it's a birch where it's got this silvery grey tone, and then with with just like a dusky purple in there, it kind of looks like you're looking at trees in a forest in the distance. So very pretty. That's everything from Northern Yarn. Bear in mind, we haven't even got to Scotland yet. So if you know much about the area around where we were staying in Scotland, so we stayed in Glen Nevis, near Ben Nevis, you'll know that the nearest town over is Fort William. And in Fort William is a shop called the Caledonian Wool Company. And oh boy, again, I struggled to come away with only a handful of things. So one of the things that really struck me about this shop was they had lots of roving options, lots of really bold, vivid tonal rovings. So I came away with a bat of burgundy and a bat of purple. So obviously my favourite colours there. I have a drop spindle and I've been trying to spin, but I really can't work the drop spindle very quickly. So I have it on the cards to try and source myself an e-spinner. So I'm hoping that once I get that, I'm going to be able to work up this burgundy and this purple into some beautiful yarn. Or I might fail miserably, I don't know, but we'll try. And then I also noticed all of the felting kits. So felting is a new to me craft. I haven't needle felted before, but the person who owns this shop is inspired by all these beautiful landmarks around Scotland when she makes these designs for needle felting kits. So then begun the trying to process, okay, which do I get, right? Which kit should I buy myself? And my husband did quite rightly point out that I should buy something that we'd been to. So even though there were some really incredible, beautiful island kits there, we haven't been to the islands yet. So I picked up something this time from a place that we visited, and when I go in future I'll be able to start a little collection, and I'm thinking maybe I'll put them on this wall behind me, so every time we go to Scotland I'll come away with a new kit and I'll just grow my collection on the wall. Starting with Steall Falls. So I ended up with this one because of all the places that we had been that we could have picked up when we were in the shop this time. This is the one that was just my favourite walk, my favourite views, and I really want to remember this day. So picked up Steall Falls. I'm going to make this at some point. So there are YouTube tutorials, so I don't think I would be in trouble if I film myself making it, because obviously I'm not going to be making it nearly as well as the person doing the tutorial. But if there's any issue around that, I'll just film like little bits and cut various bits out and try and compile something together to show me attempting to needle felt a kit. Everything that I should need is in here. So yes, really looking forward to try and make that, and hopefully it will come out nearly as pretty as hers. But I couldn't just come up with one kit, and I had a choice between, do I pick up a second location one, because there were other locations that I'd been to that I decided in the end, no, it's okay, because we'll be coming back and we'll probably come back to this place as well. So I didn't pick up a second location one, but I did pick up one of the 3D kits, and of course it had to be a wee Highland coup. So I picked up this and it started a thing. It started a souvenir purchasing theme on my part of buying things with Highland coups on them. So by the time that I finished making the various things that I picked up in Scotland, there's going to be a lot of Highland coups around my craft room. Look at this guy, he's so cute. So this is 3D, so it's going to be a different challenge to the location one. The location one is a 2D image, and then there is a like an embroidery hoop ring in there for you to frame it and put it on the wall. But this will be a different challenge because it's 3D. It looks like it should be really simple, but I just feel like I'm gonna start and then struggle. But we'll find out together. This is your fair warning that the rest of this video is going to be pretty travel related, but if you want to see how amazing Scotland is, then stick around. And I'm going to be posting timestamps regularly, so if there is anything that you want to skip or if there are any spoilers that you want to avoid, you will have the timestamps to do that. So I already hinted at this one in the Yarny section, but one of my favourite days out was the Steall Waterfall. It's why I got the felt kit for there. It was great. I thoroughly recommend a visit, but if you don't want any spoilers, then you can jump ahead to this timestamp. if you saw that footage, then how incredible was that? This was meant to be a family-friendly walk, and I was so exhausted afterwards, but it was totally worth it. Even if there were dogs and kids that were just jumping across the wet rocks that I was tiptoeing over really carefully. In my defense, I was carrying my good camera and I was very off balance. So if you're going to go, I would recommend that you take a backpack instead. What else can I just say about this? I was so struck by the size of the gorge. I was struck by the size of the boulders that the river was winding through. They were huge. Like, some of them were the size of houses. One local was not as impressed by that as I was, and pointed out in a slightly dry humour kind of way that of course the boulders were huge because they came off the massive mountain next door. So that was a little bit of Scottish humour for me. But it was so incredible. Actually, what I can say, so as you come out of the biggest part of the gorge with all these boulders in, you just suddenly come into this really serene looking, almost glen in itself. So you can still see the tops of the various mountains on each side, but it's almost like there's some sort of landmass that has collected in the valley, and it's grassy and the river is really calm at that point. And it's really strange because you could just be on a hillside on the, like, nearer the ground, but you're not, you're up a mountain. It was very weird. And then at the end of that, there was a rope bridge that crossed over to get you closer to the waterfall if you wanted. But this rope bridge was actually a cable. So it was a cable running across the length, like a single cable for you to put your feet on, and then two cables, one on each side for you to handhold. I really wanted to go across this cable bridge, but my husband tried it and even he struggled to reach the two handhold cables, and he just said that I shouldn't risk it, especially not with my camera. So, because yeah, if I'd have fallen in with my camera, I would have been absolutely devastated. So I absolutely would go to Steall Waterfall again. It was really stunning, and I wonder if it would be any easier for me now, and whether I could attempt the bridge if I didn't take my camera. Of course, our trip to Scotland couldn't all be about yarn for my sake. My husband did want to try out some Scottish whisky, and it turns out that there was a brewery right there in Fort William. So I couldn't take footage whilst I was in the brewery, but I could take photos, and I've got a short clip of those for you now. I know that alcohol isn't everybody's thing, or again, maybe you just don't want spoilers because you're going to be visiting yourself. So if you want to skip ahead, then this is the timestamp that you need. So that was our brewery tour. We got to see right from the fermenting of the grains, through the boiling, through the distilling, to the barrels to age, and all of that was using water from Ben Nevis and National Peats and Malts. So if you're interested in whiskey, it's definitely worth a visit. We did come away with a few samples. Oh, actually, that is another cool thing. If you are the designated driver when you're on this tour, then they give you little jars that you can stick your whiskey samples in to take home with you. But we also bought several taster samples of various whiskies whilst we were in Scotland, from various different places, some for us and some for our family. And then my husband bought himself a full bottle of Ben Nevis's peated whiskey. So he discovered that he's a fan of peated whiskies whilst he was on this tasting, which is really interesting. So he got that for himself. And then we also picked up some pink Lindisfarne mead. Now Lindisfarne is not in Scotland, so this is not a Scottish purchase, but I really like this mead and I struggle to find it in so many places. It's hardly anywhere, and I've tried it before when I was on Lindisfarne and it's really nice, so I had to pick some up whilst I saw it as well. So we did bring that home with us. The tour only lasted about an hour or so, 2 maximum, so we had plenty of time during the rest of the day to go and explore the rest of Fort William. And one of the places that we ended up was the Highland Soap Company factory, which was just across the road from the brewery. So that was really nice. There was a cute little cafe that we sat down in, and we knitted and read for a little bit over coffee, and then we came away with some heather and gorse scented things as well, again for us and for our family. Next on my list is the Glenfinnan Viaduct. I do want to caveat this that I consumed the corresponding content in my childhood, and for me this was about visiting a filming location that happened to be super pretty and right down the road from where we were staying. It really was beautiful, and I think that speaks more in Scotland's favour than anything else, but if you disagree, or once again you don't want spoilers, then you can skip ahead to this timestamp. The view was so beautiful. It was just classic, looking down from the hillside through the valley over a loch. I mean, how much more Scottish could you get? I also thought the view from the ground looking over the river and the riverside and then up to the viaduct was very pretty too. I was a little bit upset that I didn't get any footage of the steam train going across the viaduct, because that would have been really pretty with the steam billowing all around the viaduct, but it had stopped running the week before. The week before! We missed it. So that was a bit annoying. I didn't think they signposted that very well, so we actually walked up to the viewing point and we were really early, and we only found out about the steam train because we overheard some tourists talking about it. We hadn't seen any of the signs anywhere about how it wasn't running anymore, so that was kind of bad. And the parking wasn't off peak or anything, it wasn't cheaper for being off peak, so there wasn't really an indication that it was cancelled, well, not cancelled, but it wasn't running. So I thought that was a bit bad, but that's a me thing, that's a mini rant thing. Obviously it was still so worth going because it was beautiful with or without a train. It was really nice to walk down by the river, to walk up to the viaduct. We hadn't originally planned on doing that, but then when we saw that we could, that there was a walking route that way, we did. And I'm so glad we did because it was beautiful. There was some maintenance happening, so again, that's not so great, but it didn't totally ruin the views, so that's good. And yeah, the other thing is that whilst we were there, we picked up some souvenirs, some little trinkets. So I've been making a lot of my purchases themed around Highland coups. So obviously from the Yarny section, you already know that I got myself a felt kit of a 3D Highland coup. The theme does not stop there. Whilst I was in Glenfinnan, I picked up this Highland coup purse, which I love. It is not Harris tweed. I can't afford Harris tweed. But it is tweedy and purple, which also is very Scottish. And yeah, with the Highland coup on it, absolutely love the purse. I also, whilst I was in Glenfinnan, picked up these. So I think you can get these in a lot of places that are part of the National Trust for Scotland. So this wasn't unique to Glenfinnan, but I did see them whilst I was there, and I just thought that these were very Scottish, and of course would be really good knitting or crochet markers because they have the little lobster claws. So we have a thistle, a flag and a Highland coup. So yeah, very happy. I cannot believe that they have been sat in the bag waiting for this video since October. I haven't been able to use them, so now that I've shown you, I can finally start using them. So that's what I got from there. And then I may as well tell you about the other purchases that I've been getting for the Highland coup theme whilst I'm here. So just in Fort William, I picked up a couple of fridge magnets because that's what I do now. I have transcended to the level of my grandparents and I collect fridge magnets. So I got two of these. I really liked this one just because I thought it was quite artistic and pretty, but it's not my usual style for fridge magnets. This is my usual style. I try and get something that is sort of reminiscent of the land that I've been in, and then with the name on, and I try and get it to be 3D because I really like that tack down there. So this is the one I ended up finding. I think I found this in a service station whilst we were travelling across the country at one point, and it was quite lucky because I was really struggling to find something 3D. So that was my fridge magnet. I'll stop being my grandparents now. I'll start being children now because I also picked up this, which I'm pretty sure was a toy. It was on the side with a bunch of other models of different animals, but of course I saw the Highland coup and I had to have it. And it's just a little wooden model, so I think they just laser cut the various parts. In fact, it's not even wooden, it's just a little cardboard kit, but you take all of the parts and then you build it together and it becomes this 3D creature. So I'll be able to make that soon as well. I will have my 3D felted coup and I will have my 3D cardboard coup as well. So yes, I went a little bit extreme on the Highland coup themes. And then the last thing that I got that was Highland coup themed, I actually picked this one up on our road trip along Loch Ness. And it is probably technically a bauble, but again, Highland coup, and again, tartan in the background, so very Scottish vibes coming off of this little trinket as well. So that is everything that we picked up, the various soaps, the liquors, and all the Highland Q memorabilia as well. I should probably tell you about our road trip along Loch Ness next, shouldn't I? We drove along the loch on our way to visit friends in Inverness and made various stops along the way. As with everything in Scotland, it was incredibly pretty, and even more so when we returned at sunset. But why don't I show you? So yeah, that was our road trip to Inverness via Loch Ness. It was a long day. We started out by driving past a couple of smaller lochs on our way to Fort Augustus. So Fort Augustus is kind of like where Loch Ness starts from our direction. So we jumped out there and we grabbed coffee. We went and got some footage of the start of the loch. We also walked around the Caledonian Canal, but more on that later. And we also went shopping, and we really should have bought things that we needed at that point because we didn't, and then we ended up rushing back later in the evening, but that's a story for later as well. we then jumped back in the car and we drove down the loch and stopped at various parking spaces that they had along the loch and got out to take more footage. And it's so long. It must be like the longest loch. I mean, don't quote me on that because I don't know, but it cuts across most of the country, so it's certainly one of the largest, surely, or one of the longest. It's certainly one of the deepest lochs. And I think I read somewhere that because of how deep it is and because of how long it is, it's got more water than the entirety of the UK's lakes or something. So it's huge. And it took us a good while to drive along it. And I think what was really interesting as well is learning that range, so like that long cutaway across Scotland. If you look on a map and you look at where the lochs are and how they cut through the country in this very linear way, learning that is because of the mountain range that exists there, that the Highlands is formed from, or is a remnant of. So when the continent structure before our continent structure was moving together and forming what would become Pangaea, the part of North America, Ireland, Scotland, Norway, and I think even part of Africa were all colliding, and as they collided they built up this mountain range called the Caledonian Mountains. And then over time, after Pangaea has then pulled away from each other, we're left with these mountains that are still there, and I think that's incredible. So that's why the Highlands are so big and the lochs can be quite deep at times, because that was a mountain range back in the day, which is pretty amazing. So we're just casually driving through this ancient mountain range, no big deal, casually pretty incredible, really, really pretty. We get part way down and realise that we're really running quite late for our friends, so we had to stop taking footage and spending all our time looking out at the loch and really book it to get to our friends. We spent the day with them. I didn't record at that point because privacy, but it was really nice to catch up with them. And then we got to a point where we realised that actually it's been a really long time and we need to turn around and we need to get back, because we have a long drive back down Loch Ness to get back to our cabin to have our dinner. And then we also realised that we were going to stop off at another couple of places on the way back, and we still wanted to buy a Loch Ness toy, Nessie toy, and take a gimmicky shot over Loch Ness with our Loch Ness toy. So realising at this point that the only place we could do that was for Augustus, which was all the way back at the other end of the loch, we had to jump in the car, start driving back. On the way back we stopped at Urquhart Castle. And this is how late we were, because as we were getting to Urquhart Castle, they were taking in the last group of people, so it was already closing. Not that we would have had time to have gone, so we just kind of looked at the castle from a distance and took some photos and then had to jump back in the car. But we were really running late at this point, so we had to get from Urquhart to Fort Augustus before the shops then closed so that we could buy Nessie and then we could get our photo. So as we're going from Urquhart to Fort Augustus, we then see how beautiful the sunset is as we're driving down the loch. So we had to stop and take more videos and more photos because it was so unbelievably pretty. I mean, you've already got yellows and orange and reds and just these beautiful autumnal plant life around Scotland at the moment, because we were there in October. But then couple that with this incredible pink and purple sky from the sunset that was reflecting off the water and giving everything a little pinky purple tint. It was so beautiful, and hopefully you got a sense of that from the video footage, but in real life it was incredible. So we stop, we're taking video footage, and then we realise the sun is setting, the shops are closing, we're nowhere near our cabin for food. So we get back in the car, off we go. We make it with 10 minutes to spare to the shops, and we grab our Nessie toy, My husband goes to grab another coffee and I hop in another shop, and that's where I ended up getting my Highland Coup bauble. So that was good because this was the first time I was seeing like a colour combination I really liked, so I picked that up there. And then everything closed and it was dark. Like, we rocked up at Fort Augustus and it was already dark. So we were worried about whether we'd be able to get a photo. We walked up to the loch again, we took Nessie with us, and thankfully my camera was just about good enough to get a evening photo. It kind of worked out in our favour though, because it had this sort of atmospheric hint to the joke, because it was Nessie coming out at night, but also because it was night, there was no tourists there, and we didn't look like tourists either, so no one knew what we were doing. So when we were taking this embarrassing gimmicky photo, nobody was judging us, so that worked out in our favour. But by this point we did realise how late it was getting, and that we were really very hungry, and we still had an hour's drive back, so we didn't want to wait until we got back before we could have some food. We just nipped into a nearby pub and we grabbed some chips, we grabbed some drinks, we did some knitting and some chatting, just to sort of decompress, because by this point we'd sort of ticked everything off our list of things we wanted to do that day, and we just needed a bit of a relax. So we sat in the pub, and then we continued on our way home at our own pace. By this point it was dark anyway, and then had some food again once we got home, because we were really quite hungry. But quite a long day, quite a lot of driving. Yeah, not much more to say really. I think if we went back again we would take our time a bit more, because there's so many things that we could have done around Loch Ness. I know that it can be quite touristy, but I think the view of Urquhart Castle would be really nice from the boat tours, and there was just a lot of little castles like along the way that we didn't even stop at. A lot of little villages or little towns that we could have spent the day at. So I think if we were going back again in future, then we'd need to allow ourselves a little bit more time to investigate the area around Loch Ness. So I also mentioned somewhere called the Caledonian Canal. The Caledonian Canal is actually a 60-mile stretch of water, and not all of it is man-made. Some of it is the lochs themselves, like Loch Ness and Loch Lochy. But if you looked for the Caledonian Canal in Google, then you're probably going to get the stretch of canal lochs that exist from Loch Ness over to the next loch over in Fort Augustus, which is where we did a bit of a walk. So I can show you that now. So there were so many canals between the various lochs in Scotland. Two notable ones that we went to were the Caledonian Canal, which is what you saw there. And I think, strictly speaking, this is actually also part of the Caledonian Canal, but about 60 miles away, but Neptune's Staircase. So whilst we were in Fort William, there's Neptune's Staircase, which is another series of canal locks, but it's actually part of the 60-mile stretch that is the Caledonian Canal. So we walked around Neptune's Staircase on a different day, and we also walked up and down the more central part of the Caledonian Canal that was in Fort Augustus. We got to see a boat coming through the locks, which was fun. It takes forever, so I had the footage and I was editing it down and just thinking, oh my goodness, like this is too difficult to show. It was like 30 minutes of them trying to get through like one part of the loch. But what I did think was interesting, and I'm going to be a responsible adult here and talk about loch safety, all the people who were on the boat were wearing their life jackets, and as I sped the footage up in editing, I realised the reason for that. The currents in a loch when the water is being let through the gates to equalise are really aggressive. When you speed it up, you can see how turbulent that water is, and if you, like, even a strong swimmer would have been being sucked down in that situation. It was actually quite scary, and I did take a step back from the edge of the loch at that point, and wished I had a life jacket. So yeah, that is my little public safety announcement, is to be really careful of these things. Yeah, but otherwise it's just really interesting to see. I kind of feel like they're very peaceful places to be ordinarily. People kind of taking their time walking through the lochs, but when you think about it, they are such a feat of engineering to be able to use water equalising to move something uphill, essentially. It's pretty impressive. And we got speaking to the chap who was operating the loch for the boat at the time, and he was talking about how so many lochs now keep being like made electric, and when they're made electric they fail more than the original engineering. The original engineering is more hydraulic and relies on pressure, and it just works, whereas the electric versions can sometimes fail, which is pretty interesting that we are trying to modernise things and potentially getting it wrong. But yeah, otherwise we just had a really nice walk both times. So both where we did the Caledonian Canal centre area, and also when we did Neptune's Staircase over in Fort William. So the last thing I have to show you is actually like the first thing we did in Scotland, and that's because me and my gimbal were very new to each other, and I ended up recording an entire walk along the River Nevis and parts of the West Highland Way. It's not the best footage in the world, and it took a lot of editing because I ended up with over an hour's worth of footage that I had to condense down into something that I could actually put into a more comprehensive YouTube video. So it has been heavily edited now, but it was one of the most overwhelming parts of this, and I couldn't face it until the very end. So I've whittled it down as much as I can, and hopefully you will find it as beautiful and picturesque as I did. But here we go, the River Nevis and West Highland Way. So yes, that was the first thing we did in Scotland, was to go and explore the area. We were in a cabin that was right by the River Nevis, and so we sort of just stumble out of our door and we could cross over the river and start walking down it. It was incredibly pretty. We couldn't see the top of Ben Nevis from there because of the clouds, but it was really amazing to see all the orange heather of the mountainside. The river sounded so just relaxing. Like it wasn't a slow river. There was definitely quite rapid movements at times, and it was quite loud, but at the same time in that really natural, peaceful way. And then as we got partway down the river, we also heard birds and saw some of them. They eluded my camera, so we stopped and I got my good camera out and then tried to take pictures of them, and they were nowhere to be seen. And then the second that I put my camera away and I got my gimbal back out with my phone to record, there they were in the tree right next to us. Cheeky little birds. I did hope that we would see a little bit more wildlife whilst we were in Scotland, because I know that sometimes there can be otters in the canals and things, and sea lions in some of the sea lochs, but we didn't spend that much time around the loch, so it's kind of our own fault really that we didn't see anything like that. And we have a sneaky suspicion that we saw an eagle when we were walking, not when we were walking, sorry, when we were driving back from Steall Waterfalls, but we didn't get the binoculars out quickly enough to verify. So it could have been an eagle, it could have been a different bird of prey. It was quite big, so I'm pretty confident it was a bird of prey, but I can't tell you for sure what it was. But yes, as we were walking along the river, nothing like that, just small little birds, some robins, and I think we saw sparrows and chaffinches. I can't remember now which one was in the footage. So then we continued on our journey and walked across the river again when we got to the other footbridge, and then proceeded to walk up into the glen, into the mountains of the glen, and we didn't really realise we were aiming for the West Highland Way. I think if we realised we were aiming for the West Highland Way, we would have noticed that we weren't looking for a main kind of walkway. But as we were walking into the glen, we kept stopping and looking left and thinking, okay, well, is this where we're meant to turn? Is this where we're meant to turn? And at one point, my husband wondered whether we needed to climb over a locked gate and walk through a field, which thankfully we decided not to do because that was probably someone's private property. And then we got to a point where we saw like what looked like a path going through a woodland area. So we went down this path. It was very mossy and very naturey, and there were trees that were fallen and overgrown, and it was such a testament to nature's ability to grow over everything. And then we got to a point where it's like, this is getting quite dark and quite mossy, and the path doesn't seem to exist anymore. Are we sure we're going the right way? And it turns out we absolutely were not. So we ended up turning back on ourselves, continuing to climb up the mountainside, and then hitting this very, very main looking pathway road situation and realising where we were. So we got there in the end. And we didn't get too lost. But yeah, so we got to the West Highland Way, and there was lots of signage at that point. So we continued on our journey, we went along, and there was just these amazing views, parts where the trees cleared a bit and you could look down over the glen with Ben Nevis in the background. It was so incredible. And then as we walked back down the glen and towards our cabin, we crossed our first and only Highland coos of the trip. So we didn't actually see many Highland coos whilst we were out and about. We saw a lot of sheep, but these two coos that we saw on our way back to the cabin were the only Highland coos that we saw. So of course we said hello. We didn't try and touch them. We're very conscious that, one, that probably would have ended up with us falling in a ditch, but two, they, you know, there's no knowing how they'll behave. They're just minding their own business. So we didn't attempt anything like that. We gave them their space, just said hi and walked on our way. So yeah, that was our walk around the River Nevis. If you made it to the end of this video, then wow, you are amazing, and I hope that you enjoyed viewing Scotland with me. I had such an amazing time, and I'm absolutely going to be going back in future and looking around different parts of Scotland. It's a really huge country or part of a country, and It's just so natural and picturesque and incredible, and I can't wait to go back. Highly recommend it if you're a nature person too, to go and explore. And I am wondering if I'm going to do this again and I'm going to have these travel style videos again, then should I be doing this as a mini series, or should I be doing this like I've done this time as one long video? Let me know in the comments whether you are more of a fan of the idea of a mini series or one long video. Yeah, other than that, I am in the middle of a jumper project at the moment, so I will be hopefully coming to you soon with more regular knitting style vlogs, with some progress on that and some other little bits and pieces that I have been making. As always, let me know in the comments what you have been working on, and I will see you very soon. Bye!